My own son called me disgusting. I never thought I would hear this from the mouth of the person I raised, the person I held in my arms, bathed him with, carried on my shoulders when he had a fever and couldn't sleep. But that day, he just pointed his finger at me and said, "You've crossed the line, Father." And there I was, not understanding, not knowing where that had come from. My daughter-in-law was behind him, crying, but it wasn't the cry of pain. It was the cry of someone who had won. She hated me. She never told me why. But that day, she destroyed me. He said I leaned on my granddaughter, the only one who still came to my room at night, gave me a kiss on the forehead and said, "Grandpa, sleep well." She was my piece of peace in this house, and that was exactly why her mother used me. I stood there, unable to react. The cup I was holding fell to the floor and shattered into 1,000 pieces, and there, in the middle of the room, with the police looking at me as if I were trash, I realized no one is going to listen to me. No one wants to hear what I have to say. I spent 3 days in prison. 3. Sleeping on the cold floor, listening to the guards whisper my name as if I were an animal. "It's that old man who groped his granddaughter," they said. And I remained silent, because even my voice had been taken away from me. When I got home, my things were at the gate. Bags, boxes, not even a note. My son didn't have the courage to look me in the eyes, and my granddaughter, the one I loved the most, she looked at me with fear, as if I had really done it. That's it, an old man, accused, expelled, humiliated, without the right to even say he's innocent. And it was there, at that gate, with the smell of rain mixed with the smell of coffee that no one else had served me, that I understood. There are lies that kill more than a knife, because they bury you alive. I almost didn't have the courage to tell this. I kept it to myself for so long, afraid that no one would believe me, ashamed of what people would think of me. But the pain grew so much inside me that it couldn't fit anymore. I know it may seem crazy, exaggerated, made up, but it's real, and it still hurts today. So, if you're listening, if this reached you in some way, show me that I'm not talking alone. Like it, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me until the end, because there are still things I've never told anyone, and maybe today is the last chance. There are things that we only realize after we lose them, and there are others that we feel coming but we pretend not to see, because admitting them is more painful than bearing them in silence. I think that's what I did for many years. I pretended I didn't see them, that I didn't hear them, that it didn't hurt that much, but it hurt more and more. The house was small, but it always seemed too big after my wife left. She was the one who filled the spaces with the noise of pots and pans, the smell of coconut soap and soft prayers before bed. After she left, I stayed there alone, until my son invited me to live with him. I thought it was love. I thought it was gratitude. I thought it was family. I accepted. It was a modest 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood in the French countryside. The morning smelled of freshly baked bread, and not just in my memory. I still remembered how to make it. French bread with a hard crust and soft crumb that crackled on your teeth. Sometimes I would wake up earlier than everyone else just to leave the house smelling of that smell that made my granddaughter smile when she came downstairs in her pajamas, her eyes still puffy from sleep. She would come over, hug my legs and say, "Daddy, you are the best baker in the world." She was my sunshine, small, smart, full of questions. She made me laugh even when my chest felt heavy. We would sit in the backyard in the late afternoons, and I would tell her made-up stories, mixed with things I had experienced. She thought I was a hero, and maybe, for a few moments, I believed that too. I made toys for her out of old wood, a little doll with arms that moved, a little house with a real roof, a little horse with wheels that she pulled around the house. And when dinner was late, I made pancakes with flour and milk, the way only old people know how, with a hint of affection and a sad silence in my eyes, She licked her fingers, smeared sugar on her nose, and called me my magical old man. She was the only one who looked me in the eyes with truth, but not every look in that house was like that. Her mother, my daughter-in-law, never called me by my name, never called me anything, not even sir, no good, no grandfather. It was just him. He's there again. He messed with my pots. He keeps messing with the girl, always with that cold, dry voice like someone chewing on a rock. She said that I spoiled her granddaughter too much, that I spoiled the girl, that I medded where I shouldn't have. One day I heard her talking on the phone without knowing that I was there on the porch. He's glued to her all the time. That's not normal. I don't trust him. That went through me like a knife. But I pretended not to hear, because admitting that your own family distrusts you is like dying a little inside. And my son, my boy, who I raised alone after his mother died, he didn't say anything. He would just sit on the couch, looking at his phone. I would look at him, trying to find some reaction, some defense, but nothing, not a gesture, not a, "Dad, are you okay?" Sometimes I thought he didn't even remember who I was anymore. I began to notice that things in the house were disappearing. My tools, my books, even a picture of my wife that was on my nightstand, disappeared. When I asked her, she answered in a sharp voice, "This is not a museum. This is our house." And he remained silent. I was growing smaller inside the house. I avoided leaving my room when they were having dinner. I spent more time in the yard, working in the soil, without even knowing what to plant. One day, my granddaughter brought me a wilted flower and said, "Daddy, plant this here. It will grow pink." I planted it. To this day, I don't know the name of that flower, but I watered it every day, as if it were the last thing that connected me to it. There was a day, a Sunday, that she asked me to sleep in my room. She said she liked my blanket, that it smelled like "Grandpa!" Her mother heard her. She came running, grabbed the girl by the arms and yelled at me, "Do you think this is normal? Do you really think I'm going to let you?" I tried to explain. I tried to say that it was just affection, that the girl felt safe there. But she didn't want to listen. She slammed the door shut, and for the first time, I froze. My body didn't move, only my eyes burned. That night, my granddaughter didn't kiss me goodnight. The house got colder. The silence started to hurt, and I realized that something was changing. It wasn't all at once. It was little by little, like a slow poison. First, she cut me off from conversations. Then she forbade her granddaughter from entering my room. Then she said it was better if I didn't pick her up from school anymore. She claimed that I was disrupting her routine, all with that tone of someone who doesn't argue. She just imposes. And my son, the one I saw being born, the one I held in my arms with trembling hands, he turned his back. He said it was better for me to give him space, that it was just a phase, that things would get better, but they didn't improve. I started to feel afraid of being in my own home, afraid of speaking, afraid of existing, afraid of being a nuisance, afraid of being a burden. I started to doubt myself, to think, am I really getting in the way? Am I getting too old? Am I doing something wrong without realizing it? One day, I found myself apologizing for making pancakes. I looked at myself there with the wooden spoon in my hand, and I felt a shame that wasn't mine. It was a borrowed shame, forced into me by eyes that never really saw me. I tried to keep quiet. I tried to disappear inside the house. I tried not to exist. But even so, the thing kept growing, a resentment that wasn't mine, a hurt that had no roots. Something was coming, and even without knowing what it was, I felt it. Because people feel. We feel when tragedy has already entered the door. But no, one saw it. It happened on a Wednesday. I remember it because it was the only day of the week that I made herb bread, my granddaughter's favorite. She liked the smell of rosemary. She said it made her dream of an enchanted forest. I tried everything I could just to see her smile, because it had been a long time since anyone in that house had smiled at me. That morning, she wanted to help me in the kitchen. She climbed up on a stool and started throwing flour everywhere, laughing, getting messy. I laughed too. It was one of those rare moments when the world seemed to still have salvation, but not everything that is beautiful lasts. And in that house, beauty always came with a price. Her mother appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. She stared at her for a few seconds and then said dryly, "She's not your doll." I didn't even understand right away. I asked if there was something wrong. She replied, "Yes, you do. You get too involved. It's not a grandfather's job to be glued to a child all day." I took a deep breath. I felt my chest heat up, but I still tried to speak calmly. "She likes being with me. There's nothing wrong with that." That's when she screamed, loudly, with her eyes wide open, as if she had been accumulating this for years. "You'll see what I'm capable of." She left, slamming the door. The flour flew in the wind from the impact. The cup shook on the table. And my granddaughter looked at me scared. I told her it was okay, that Mom was just nervous. But something inside me knew. I knew that scream wasn't just anger, it was a warning. Over the next few days, silence filled the house. My granddaughter could barely see me. When she tried to approach me, she was harshly called back. I began to become more and more reclusive. I went back to sleeping with the door locked, not out of fear of others, out of fear of myself, because I began to feel like I was being pushed into some dark place. Then came Saturday. I was in the kitchen, trying to make coffee, when there was a knock on the door. It wasn't an ordinary knock, it was sharp, loud, 3 times. I looked out the window and saw the uniforms. 2 police officers. One of them was holding a piece of paper. The other had his hand already near his gun. I opened it with my heart racing. They asked my name. I confirmed it. The youngest's voice shook a little as he said, "You are being accused of sexual abuse of a minor. We need you to come with us." At the time, I thought it was a mistake. Literally, I laughed nervously. I said, "There must be a mistake here. Abuse of what? Of whom?" They didn't answer. One took me by the arm. The other was already entering the room. My daughter-in-law appeared. She was crying, but they weren't tears of pain. They were dry, rehearsed tears, and my son was there, standing, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, staring at the floor. He didn't say a word. As they took me away, I asked, "Was it her?" She said that, and no one answered. The gate closed behind me. The neighbor across the street looked at me, surprised. The lady on the corner covered her mouth with her hand, and I felt the ground slip away. But my body remained standing, because I still didn't understand. I was still trying to believe that it would be explained, that someone would laugh and say it was a misunderstanding. But they didn't laugh. No one said anything. And that's how the truth stopped mattering. Because it only took one sentence, one lie, to destroy everything I was. And in that cold cell, with the smell of mold and urine, sitting in the corner with my knees pulled up to my chest, I understood that a lifetime of honesty can be erased by a single cursed sentence. "You know what's worse?" I could still hear my granddaughter's voice, asking if the rosemary bread would be out of the oven in time for afternoon tea. I couldn't even cry. I just felt the ground disappear. You know that feeling of being in a bad dream, but too real to wake up from? That's how it felt when they put me in the back seat of the police car. I wasn't even handcuffed, not because they respected me, but because they knew I wasn't going to run. I couldn't even move. The whole neighborhood saw it. The lady who always ordered my fresh bread looked at me as if I were a worm. The guy at the grocery store, the same one who had already called me uncle, closed the door as soon as our eyes met, and I stood there, standing still with my head down, not out of shame or guilt, but out of humiliation. The road to the police station seemed endless. I saw everything passing by through the window, but without seeing anything. It was as if I were in a black and white world. The colors had disappeared. The sound of the city turned into a hum. Inside me, only one thought echoed. How did they get to this? How did they let this happen? At the police station, I was treated like a number, just any number. They sat me down on a cold chair, took off my wedding ring, the same one I had never taken off since the day I got married, and put it in a plastic box with my name written in typescript. Properties of the accused. Accused. That word corroded me more than any cell. More than the look on the police officers' faces, more than the disgusted expression on the attendant's face. Accused. As if everything I was had been exchanged for a lie. They took me to a communal cell. 4 concrete beds, a torn mattress on each one, a bucket in the corner to serve. As a toilet, the smell, my God, the smell. It was of mold, of old sweat, of rotting humanity, and I, an old man in my 70s with a broken soul, trying to understand how I ended up there. The other prisoners didn't say much. They looked at me suspiciously. One of them, younger, whispered to another, "It's the one about the granddaughter." And then came the silence, the kind of silence that weighs on you, that suffocates you, that isolates you even with people around. The first night, I didn't sleep. I sat there hugging my knees. I remembered the smell of my granddaughter's room, the drawings on the wall, the way she laughed when I made funny voices in stories. I clung to these memories like someone holding onto a piece of wood in the middle of the sea. Outside, no one came looking for me. No calls, no lawyers, nothing. Not even my son. Not a word. It was like I had vanished. Time didn't pass in there. Every hour was a blow to my dignity. On the second day, an agent asked me, coldly, "Are you going to confess or are you going to keep up the act?" I looked at him and just replied, "I only loved my granddaughter and now I'm here." He laughed like I was crazy, and left me alone. As the days went by, I began to disappear, not in body and in spirit. He no longer recognized my voice. I no longer remembered what it was like to wake up to the smell of coffee or to hear a real good morning. Inside, time destroys you slowly, and the worst punishment is knowing that on the outside no one misses you. There was a morning when I asked God to take me. I really did. I knelt on that filthy floor with my knees already purple and whispered, "If I am truly innocent, take me before I forget who I am." But he didn't take it. The next morning, one of the guards said they were going to release me. There was no evidence. Someone signed a paper. Nothing was explained. No one apologized. They just gave me my belongings, my ring, my wallet, my glasses, and pushed me back into the world. But I wasn't the same anymore, and the street wasn't either. The sidewalk seemed narrower, the sky seemed grayer, and the shame, it kept following me, even after the prison gates closed behind me. When they let me go, I didn't know whether to celebrate or shrink even more. "There is not enough evidence. You are free." That's what the police officer said, without looking me in the eye, as if he was returning a lost object, not a broken man. I grabbed my things. Everything fit in a cardboard box. My wallet, my wedding ring, my scratched glasses, and the rest was just embarrassment. I walked out the front door with small steps, as if I was still handcuffed. I looked around, trying to find a familiar face, any face, but there was no one. No cars waiting, no hands waving, not a soul. I walked home, not by choice, out of fear of hearing no again. I hitched 2 silent rides. The drivers avoided looking at me too much. I waved goodbye and got out quickly. When I got to the gate of my son's house, my legs were shaking. I tried to turn the key. Someone had changed the lock. I knocked once, twice, 3 times. It took a while, but the door opened. It was him, my son, the same boy who once slept on my chest with a high fever and afraid of the dark. He stood still, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Father," he said. That was it. I tried to smile. I tried to look strong, but my body felt heavy. The words came out cut off by a lump in my throat. "They changed the lock," I said. He looked down. He said nothing. Was it her?" I asked. He hesitated. It's complicated, Dad. We need some time, until everything calms down. But I was released. There's nothing. I didn't do anything. I know. It's just, it's hard, you know? The girl, she's still scared. And we need to respect that. Fear. That word pierced me like a knife. Is she afraid? Of me? He didn't answer. He just closed the door. Pay for a place for you. For a while. Until things get better. Improve what? I asked. I'm not guilty. Dad, you better go. And the door closed. I stood there, my hands clutching the box with my pieces. The sound of the lock locking was louder than any scream. I sat down on the curb. The sky began to darken. It was raining lightly. My clothes were sticking to my body, the cold seeping into my bones. And still, I didn't move. I thought about my granddaughter, so small, so confused. Did they tell her something? Did she cry? Did she ask for me? Or did they teach her to be afraid of the old man who made bread? I spent that night in a shelter, a thin mattress, a damp blanket, and 30 men coughing and groaning in the corners. No one knew my name. No one wanted to know, and for the first time in my life, I felt dead, even though I was alive. In the following days, I sought help, a lawyer, an old acquaintance. I knocked on doors. Some opened, others closed in my face. A neighbor offered me coffee, but avoided looking me in the eye. I walked back to my granddaughter's school. I waited on the other side of the street, leaning against a lamppost. I wanted to see her from afar, just to see her. When she came out, wearing a pink backpack and her hair tied up, my heart raced. She looked fine, but she didn't smile. She didn't even look around. She walked quickly, pulled by her mother's hand. I raised my hand, quietly, in an almost invisible gesture. She didn't see, or pretended not to. It hurts not to be called back, but it hurts much more when the silence comes from the one you loved the most. I went back to the shelter. I stayed there, and when winter came, I realized that this was no longer a phase. It was the new end of the line, because even though I was free, I had nowhere else to go back to. Have you ever seen a man thrown out of his own family, without the right to defend himself? I found a place to stay after weeks of wandering, asking. People who still owed me a little memory. It was an old house, almost in ruins, at the back of a plot of land where a brickyard used to be. The roof was leaking, the windows didn't close properly, the floor was cold and cracked cement. But that was all I had. And for the first time in a long time, I felt invisible. I no longer had neighbors whispering. I had no scared granddaughter. I had no son avoiding me. There was only me and the echo of the days. Hunger came, but not as we imagined. It was subtle. First, there was no coffee. Then there was bread. And soon there was only a half-eaten bag of rice, which I stretched out as best I could. What hurt the most was not an empty stomach. It was opening my eyes and knowing that no one was going to show up. No one was going to knock on the door with a blanket, a bowl of soup, or a sincere question. Are you okay? No. The hardest part wasn't the hunger. It was the silence from the people I loved. Every day was the same. I woke up before the sun, more out of habit than desire. I walked around the neighborhood, collected dry branches, and tidied up the house as best I could. And at night, I sat on a broken plastic chair and stared into space. There was no television. There was no radio. Just the sounds of the countryside and my head, which wouldn't leave me alone. I started writing in an old notebook, not letters, confessions, things I never said, about my son's childhood, about the stories I made up for my granddaughter, about how invisible I felt since my wife passed away. Sometimes I cried as I wrote. Other times I stopped in the middle of a sentence and tore the page. One morning I found an envelope under my door, yellow paper, carefully folded. It had no return address, no signature, just one sentence written in a firm handwriting. Her revenge cost you more than you deserved. I stood there for minutes, reading and rereading. It wasn't an apology, it wasn't forgiveness, it was just an Acknowledgement. Someone knew, someone out there understood that it was all exaggerated, cruel, unjust. I kept that paper as if I were a talisman. It wasn't much, I know, but it was the only thing I had, a phrase out in the world, telling me that I hadn't been completely forgotten. From then on, I started to walk more cautiously. Every different noise made me look over my shoulder. Every shadow seemed like someone about to spit that lie again. I was free, yes, but I was never truly free again. I'd already given up, not on life, but on the idea that anything could still be fixed. Over time, we don't die all at once. We gradually disappear. First, it's the name that no one mentions anymore. Then it's the face that doesn't appear in the photos. Then even the memory of your voice becomes an uncomfortable thing, a weight that others prefer not to carry. That day, it was raining. It always rains when life decides to change something. The water hit the broken tiles of the house as if trying to say something. I was sitting on the plastic chair, as usual, waiting for the weather to pass, when I heard a car stop outside. I thought it was someone curious, someone lost, someone looking for another address. But no, that's when I saw that shadow at the door, and then the voice. Papi. My soul froze. It had been more than 10 years. 10 years without hearing that sound, that word. I got up slowly, thinking it was just another dream, the kind that ends when you reach out your hand. But she was there, really, standing with her hair tied back, her eyes swollen from crying. She was a grown woman now, but her eyes were still those of the girl who said I made magic pancakes. She walked in slowly. She looked at everything, as if she recognized it and found it strange at the same time. "It's different, isn't it?" I said, my voice breaking. She didn't answer. She came closer. She looked at me with a mixture of fear, guilt, and longing. Then she cried. She broke down. She hugged me so tightly that I thought my heart wouldn't be able to take it. "Forgive me, Papi. Forgive me." I didn't understand. I just hugged her back. I could smell her hair, which now had an adult perfume, but which reminded me of the talcum powder she used when she was a child. She let me go, wiped her eyes, and said, "She died, Mommy, a month ago." I sat down, not because of the news, but because of the way she said it. No anger, no relief, just like someone carrying a weight. Before she died, she gave me a letter she wrote when she found out she had cancer. She made me promise I would only read it after she was gone. I read it a week ago, and since then, I haven't been able to sleep. She took a folded piece of paper out of her jacket pocket. She didn't hand it to me, she just held it up. She said she accused you because she hated you, because you were always everything my father wanted to be, and because he loved you more than he loved her. The words came out like stone, hard, painful, final. She knew she was going to die, and she didn't want to carry that with her. She said, if I was ever strong, to look for you and tell you the truth. I didn't cry. Not there, not in front of her. I just took a deep breath. My chest felt like it was going to crack. It was as if that sentence, "She hated you because my father loved you more than her," had been driven through my entire history like a rusty nail. She made me believe, the granddaughter continued, that you were dangerous, that you were sick, and I was a child, Papi. I just obeyed. I was afraid. I didn't even know why. She fell to her knees on the floor. "Forgive me. Please, forgive me for turning my face away, for leaving you there alone." I knelt down too. Age didn't allow me to do it easily, but I did. I took her shoulders and said, "You were a little girl, and I was an old man with a broken heart, but it still beat for you. It always did." We hugged each other there on the cold floor of that empty house, as if it were the last hug in the world, and maybe it really was. The first after so much silence, and the last before everything changed again. She stayed there with me for a few hours. She told me about her life, her fears, her traumas, her dreams. She said she was afraid of looking like her mother, but that she didn't want to be like her. And before she left an envelope on the table. "This is for you, her letter. Only read it when you're alone." She kissed me on the forehead. She left. The car drove off slowly, and I stood there, alone again, but for the first time in a long time, with something in my chest that felt like warmth. It took me hours to open the envelope, but when I did, I understood everything. But that's another story. The envelope was plain, brown paper, already yellowed at the edges, with my name handwritten on it. Pierre. That was it. No greeting, no date, no excuse, just my name. But that name, written there, it already weighed like a sentence. It took me a while to open it. I stared at it for hours, as if it were a bomb about to explode. Part of me wanted to tear it up, throw it away, pretend nothing had happened. But another part, the part that still bled every day, needed to know. I needed to understand. I needed something that would make me stop doubting myself. Because the worst loneliness is the one that makes you believe that maybe other people are right. I opened it carefully, as if the corner of the paper might cut me. Her handwriting was firm, quick, as if she were in a hurry to get it off her chest. And it was long, longer than I expected. "Pierre, I should start by apologizing, but I know that one word will never fix what I did. For years I hated you, and today I know that this hatred wasn't just yours, it was mine. It was what was left of my frustration, of my pain, of my marriage dying, of the man I loved treating me like a shadow while he treated you like a hero." With each line it was as if she pulled me into a memory I didn't even know existed. "You were always good to Anne, and that irritated me, because she adored you, and I didn't know how to be a mother anymore. I was angry to see her smile with you, when with me she only looked at me from a distance. I thought it was you who took her away from me, but it wasn't. It was me." I stopped reading for a few minutes. The lamplight was shaking. The wind was making the door creak, and I was shaking too. It wasn't cold, it was shame, fear, pain. I continued reading. "That afternoon, when we argued, I saw in your eyes that you didn't understand. And that made me even angrier. You never fought back. You never yelled. You never fought back. You always accepted. And that made me feel small, inferior. So I did what small people do. I destroyed you. I accused you." The pen had failed her in one place, and for a moment I imagined her writing it with a shaky hand, perhaps already ill, perhaps already regretful. I knew it was a lie. But I also knew they would believe me, because you were old, quiet, and you had too much love for that girl. And sometimes people confuse love with something wrong. And I took advantage of that. I used that. I didn't think about the consequences. I just wanted to get you out of our lives. I just wanted to make you pay for being everything I couldn't be. I closed my eyes. I clutched the letter to my chest. The rest of the text spoke of the illness, of the guilt, of the nightmares, of the nights when she would wake up hearing my voice in the silence. She said she had tried to tell her son, but he wouldn't listen. She said she thought I might never know the truth, but that she had to try. "If Anne has the courage to look for you, treat her well. She's not to blame for anything. She still loves you, even if she doesn't know it. And you, Pierre, you were the only good man in that house." Signed, Only Marie. I read that letter 10 times, each time with the same lump in my throat. I cried, not with relief, not with justice, but with sadness. Sadness for everything that was destroyed for nothing, for everything that could have been different, for everything that will never come back. I kept the letter inside a book. I placed it between the pages as if I were hiding a piece of my own heart, and that night I slept sitting up, with the light on, as if turning off the light would also erase the little truth that I still had left. Going back was never part of my plans, not after everything. I had accepted my exile, my silence, my shadow. I didn't expect any more reunions or justice or explanations. But after that letter, and after looking into my granddaughter's eyes again, Something inside me rose up. It wasn't anger, it was something else. It was the desire not to leave like a ghost. I arrived in the village on an overcast morning. The same cobblestones, the same trees twisted by the decades. But everything seemed smaller, or maybe I was just older, more tired. People saw me. I felt it. They sensed my presence before they even looked at me. A woman from the market crossed the street. A man selling flowers lowered his eyes. A child looked at me blankly. His parents hurriedly pulled him away. No one said anything, but the silence spoke loudly. A dirty, ancient silence. The kind of silence that comes from guilt. I didn't care. I kept walking, one step at a time, dragging my story along the sidewalks where I once sold warm bread with a smile on my face and flour in my arms. The old bakery was there. The facade was worn, the wood faded, the sign hanging off to one side. It had been closed for years, ever since life began to erase me. But the key I never returned. I opened the door slowly. The smell was different, musty, dusty, time standing still. But beneath it all, there was still a trace of yeast, of memory. The memory of what we were sticks to the walls, no matter how many summers they pass. I walked to the back. The oven was there, rusty, silent, like me. I ran my hand over it. The skin was wrinkled against the rough stone. My fingers trembled, but my soul was steady. I picked up the firewood piled in a corner. There was enough left. I lit it slowly, with the same ritual as decades ago. Each spark was like a beat in my chest. The fire began to grow, and with it, something grew inside me. A presence, a reckoning that needed no words. I stood there, feeling the heat rise, illuminating that forgotten space. I didn't need to make bread. I didn't need to sell anything. I just wanted the village to see, to know, to remember. Yes, I'm back, and not as a defeated man. I came back as someone who survived lies, abandonment, and the hunger for love, like someone who was buried alive, but dug with his nails until he found the light again. Outside, someone walked slowly past and looked in the window. I don't know who it was. It doesn't matter. He didn't say anything. He just stood there for a few seconds, then he was gone. But I saw, and maybe, just maybe, they saw it too. That morning, I lit the oven one last time, not out of pride, but out of memory. Because sometimes the last fire is the one that warms the truth that the world tried to extinguish. False words build prisons worse than iron. I lived this, not for days, not for months, for years. And not only inside a cold cell, but inside people's eyes, inside the whispers, crossing the streets, inside the silence of my own son. I was imprisoned for what I did not do, condemned for what they did not say out loud but spread with their eyes. The pain of injustice is not just what they do to you, it is what they take from you, your dignity, your name, your peace. They took everything from me, my home, my family, my place in the world. I was spit out of a life that I built with my hands, with my heart, with every crumb of sacrifice that a father, a grandfather, a man can make. But one thing they didn't achieve. They couldn't erase who I was, because I was good, even in silence, even in pain, even when they left me alone with nothing, eating cold rice and sleeping on a borrowed mattress. I was good. And the truth, even buried, even stifled, even despised, it survived. She survived in my granddaughter's embrace that afternoon when she returned. She survived in the letter Marie wrote before she died. She survived in the fire I lit in the bakery. She survived in me, and maybe it survives now in you who are listening to me, because if you have ever been unfairly accused, if you have ever been looked at with contempt without knowing your story, know this: your truth still lives in someone, and one day she finds her way back, telling this hurt, but hiding it for so long hurt even more. We get used to keeping quiet, like someone who swallows stones every day and pretends they are bread. But today, for the first time, I took that weight off my chest. And you, You listened to me until the end, and that changes everything for me. I stay here in this sunset with my heart still heavy, but a little lighter, because someone listened, someone understood, and deep down, that was all I needed. Comment here with the word true if you too have ever had to carry a silence that no one saw. Leave a like, follow the channel. Maybe someone else needs to hear this. Maybe someone else is waiting for a listen like this. And if this already hurt you, get ready, because the next story is more dramatic, more cruel, and with more twists and turns. It is a confession from someone who has a deep trauma and needs to be heard, and I know that you can be that person. So, click on the video that appears now, and watch this confession that will move you, revolt you, and teach you valuable lessons that you will never forget.